Hi, everybody. Matt Croyle here. I am the founder and film festival director of the Oil Valley Film Festival. Welcome to the 2022 Oil Valley Film Festival, and one of a few interviews that I have with some awesome folks this year. I am very privileged and proud to bring you the executive director of the George A. Romero Foundation. Suzanne Romero. Suze, hi, how are you?
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the Oil Valley Film Festival. People are going to be watching this and checking things out. And so I'm so happy that you're a part of it this year. I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you, and I hope everybody enjoys the movies because that's what this is all about,
It
right?
really is.
Watching
Yeah.
movies together
Yeah. That
and
whole
enjoying
experience.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So for those who may not be aware, Suzanne was married to George A. Romero. For most of the world, I guess they would recognize that name from Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead, and subsequent productions as well. Suze, so after George had passed away, could you maybe give me a rundown of how you decided to go ahead and form and launch the Romero Foundation and what the goals of the organization were and what they're moving toward now?
He passed away, and I was obviously feeling very sad and wondering what I was going to do. And I was roaming the halls of my apartment, and I kept getting these emails from Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
all these wonderful institutions like Andy Warhol, the Film Institute, and all of these folks. And I was part of a big, huge chain of emails, and they were really trying to get some kind of a celebration for Romero in Pittsburgh. And I don't know. I don't know what made me, you know, answer one of these emails, but I did say yes to a Zoom.
Yeah.
One of now many. And I did the Zoom, and it was very ineffective because there was like 35 people there, and it
Sure, you
was
don't have the focus, yeah.
yeah, no, it was no focus. And but everybody's intent was obvious, the love of Romero. And so I decided to drive to Pittsburgh, and I met with them, and and I met with them twice, and it seemed obvious to me that they needed a quarterback of some kind.
Right.
And I started talking to some folks, and we decided to create the foundation in order to support these endeavors. And so that's what we did, and it was very quick, actually. And so our first event was the Romero Lives event in 20 it was 2018 that happened. And since then, I've been sort of corralling passion, which is
You
you
have,
know so,
yes.
it's so wonderful. And so we've created a foundation. We have a team, and what we're really trying to do is, well, we have several objectives. One, of course, is um, to elevate and to cherish Romero as a filmmaker, and also to protect his films. We brought in the amusement park, which was our very first official project, which people are going to enjoy and are enjoying presently. And we also want to support young filmmakers, support young children, kids with cameras. We think that's kind of cool.
It's the best way to do it.
It really
It
is.
really
And
truly is. Yeah. Get them
yeah,
shooting young, get them telling stories young.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I agree
Yeah.
100%.
I love it. We send them a kit, and they get some mentoring, and they have to make a 7 or 8 minute movie, and it's one of my pleasures. I love watching those movies. They're so wonderful.
And
So,
that's one thing here at the
anyways,
film festival that I also love doing is the fact that not only are you getting to see, creativity that you might not normally see, but just to be able to share that stuff with other people. And I think that's important.
It is. It absolutely is. And one of his delights or pleasure was making movies with friends, like with people who were like-minded on a set, making a movie. This was his dream, and he got to do it 17 times. So that's what we're trying to foster and encourage, and also elevate horror. I think that horror
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
gets second class citizen stuff, and it just bugs me. And so I'm in my own little way, we're hoping to change the way people look at horror films.
It's wonderful. So, as someone who also runs an organization, I mean,
Mhm.
I understand how overwhelming and stressful it can get at times. So, what do you do to ground yourself, like when the work becomes too much or overbearing, or you just got to kind of step away from it? What do you do to kind of ground yourself?
Well, I have a huge amount of interests. I play tennis. I listen to music. I read. I have many interests, so I go to that. But to be honest, there hasn't been too many overwhelming days, I have to say.
That's good.
They've
That's great.
they've been pleasurable generally, and I have such a great team around me. I'm surrounded by smart people, and so when things get stupid, I just walk away for maybe a couple hours and then
Kind of
whack a
reset.
ball, whack a ball, on a tennis court,
Well,
and
that's
we're
good.
good.
That's good that you don't have very many of those days. I think that's a testament to enjoying what you do, because
Yeah,
don't they always say, like, if it doesn't feel like work, then that's the important thing. So if you're loving what you're doing, then
yeah.
that's
No,
all that matters.
I love that. I'm spreading the word. It's not to sound like a reverend or anything, but just the fact that my favorite subject is Romero, and I get to do it and talk about him every day. So it's a labor of love. I'll just put it that way.
Okay, so for those listening or watching this, who may be too young to remember George himself.
Mm.
So, what was he like as a person? What about his personality do you feel kind of transferred over to his creative side when it came to writing and directing?
Well, that's a good question. George was well, he just loved to write. So he would noodle all the time. It was just something that he loved to do. But really, George and I had a lot of the same interests. So, we would just do stuff, and then he would I think that's basically it. He was just a writer. So I lived with a writer who
So, I'm
happened
sure
to
he
do
was
some
always
directing.
right. I'm sure he was always watching people and trying to bring things in. I mean,
Well,
that's what us writers do anyway.
yeah, I think he listened to news. He was a news junkie.
Nice.
Yeah, so he watched news, and then he'd hear a piece, and then he'd go, "Oh, Jesus," and then he'd do some
He'd
writing,
have an
and
idea for it.
he'd have
Yeah.
an idea. Yeah, he was an idea guy. Yeah.
That's great. So a lot of horror fans, speaking of horror movies and the promotion of horror films throughout with the Romero Foundation, I know a lot of horror fans are probably wondering whether or not the foundation is currently involved in helping bring any new horror movies to screen.
Yeah, not
If I'm allowed to
directly.
ask that.
Yeah, you are allowed to ask it, but I think what we're doing, because we get requests every day. Oh,
Oh, I'm
can you
sure.
take a look at my movie, or take a look at my script, or
Right.
take a look at, I have this great idea. What do you think? And I like it. But we're not in a position to actually help individuals. Where we help is through institutions, like
Right.
the George A. Romero program at the DEC, at Steeltown Entertainment.
Yes.
We help interns. We've helped the George Romero program at Salem, to
I'm glad you're
mentorships.
mentioning
Yeah.
these because these are very worthwhile organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And so that's how we help is through mechanisms as opposed to saying, hey, now occasionally we admit we love a project, and so we will give a helping hand.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but we're not in the business to help produce individuals. I think that we just need to have a place where people can be directed to go, and have maybe some money to help along.
Having made a film, I've had people come up to me in bars, like literally trying to pitch me ideas, and I
Yeah.
feel weird trying to tell them, like, look, like I will sit down and talk to you about how to make a movie. I will help you out as much as I can, but like it's not a thing where people are just gonna. You don't need permission from anybody to make your stuff.
No, in fact, George used to always say, "Just shoot."
Yep.
In the old days, where film was very expensive and the equipment was very
Sure.
expensive,
Yeah.
and distribution was a lot easier, but making the actual art was quite expensive and difficult. Now, making the art is easy.
Yeah.
It's quite easy.
People can
The
shoot
problem
amazing stuff
is
on their phones. Yeah.
amazing on your
Yeah.
phone.
Just brilliant.
So it's easy to make. I say easy. uh you know you still need a good
Logistically.
story.
Logistically,
Yes, you
it's
still,
easy. Yeah.
but the technology is there so
Correct.
that it's relatively inexpensive, and you can shoot on your phone, you can edit, you can do almost everything. It always comes down to, though, at least in my opinion, it's about the story. If you
Correct.
don't have a
I
good
agree.
story, then why bother? So it's the story, and then how do you actually tell that story through the lens,
Right.
through a camera, and using all the tools that we have technologically. That's just sort of the easiest part, but story hard,
Yes.
shooting relatively easy.
Accessible. Very much so. Yeah.
Accessible is
Yeah.
actually a much better word. Yeah.
Um, so as the one in charge of George's scripts, okay, in the
Well,
archive, you have the archive, you have some scripts that have never been produced. Is there any Romero script that you ever read that you thought, I would really like to see this on screen? One
well,
that was
I
never made.
certainly, yeah, first of all, I'm not in charge of the archive.
Okay. Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I'm not. I no, I was a contributor to the archive
So the archive is
along with
through the
Tina.
University of Pittsburgh, correct?
Yes, it's at the
Okay.
library system there. And so as Tina Romero, Peter Grunwald, his partner, and I,
Mhm.
sort of had his stuff,
You were
and now
reading
they
through some
house
things.
it.
Yeah.
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 So,
Do you have any
but
favorites?
but there's a lot of stuff there. And here's an interest. Well, not maybe interesting, but all those unproduced film or stories
Right.
were never produced. They were failures, actually. Like he would pitch them, and they'd say, "Oh no, George, no,
Mhm.
we're not today." And then he,
Right.
10 years later, he might reboot and modernize it, pitch it
Right.
again. And so all of these treatments and scripts and storyboards and ideas were all pitched to people.
But they were just never picked up.
They were never
Nobody ever
picked up.
wanted to do them. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And so it goes to show you that George Romero had a relatively successful career. He was a prolific writer, and only 17 pictures got made.
And to say only is kind of funny, but
I
just for the fact
know
that that's a lot.
it
But
is
yeah.
a lot, and they were relatively successful,
Right.
considering that he was actually able to make or have a career,
Right. Yeah.
which is tough, but there's 50 film scripts there that were not, they
That
were
never saw the light of
rejected.
day.
They
Yeah.
never saw the light of day. So
Wow.
obviously, the man was hugely talented. And the fact that he was rejected is one of the reasons why the foundation exists, because it it's crazy that such a talented person couldn't get some of his work out.
Yeah.
And it really shows how difficult it is to be in this business, really, making, if you're a creative like you are, it's hard.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
hard.
Very much so. Like I have to do other things, otherwise I would not survive.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
just the way
And
that it
it's
works.
sad.
Yeah.
Exactly. And every once in a while, a project, whoa, gets picked up. George would say, I never thought it would be this one. I
Right.
always
Yeah.
thought it would be this one,
Hmm.
And so it's hard to say when these pictures get picked up or why a script is loved and another script isn't. It's just hard it's just hard.
But that's the important of just of keep doing the work too.
Yeah,
Like you just have to
exactly.
keep. You're gonna hear a million no's before you hear why
Oh,
yes. It's just
absolutely.
how it works.
Yeah. And
Um.
and also,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No,
No,
you're
no.
fine. I'll let you finish.
I just I just thought that, George was driven by his passion to want to make a movie.
Right.
And, he would always say, just give me money and I'll make a movie. I've got ideas. Just give me the money. And sometimes he'd get the money
Yeah.
and other times he didn't. And the less money there was, though, the more power he had. So
Correct.
he always
Yeah.
tried to keep it small.
Keep the
Yep.
budget smaller.
Yep.
No, that makes sense.
Less
So
suits.
what is your well, yeah, less suits. What's
Less suits.
your favorite George movie of all
Oh
time?
my.
I
Yeah,
know
that's hard.
that's a tough
It,
question because you've told me stories about you guys sitting down and was introducing you to his own stuff because
yeah,
you had never watched
no,
any of it. So like you had no
no.
idea what you were getting into anyway when you guys met. So
Yeah, no, we did a film festival and we saw his films in sequence.
oh wow.
How, when he, until, and so I actually saw 15 because I was on the sets for the last two. So that film festival was 15 movies. And yeah, I have to say, though, now looking back and now knowing more about his career than ever before, because every day I learn more about his work. And I get corrected all the time. No, this what happened, so I'm learning every day. But I really love, for some reason, I love the last film he did, Survival of the Dead, and I love the first film he did. And I love the evolution from the first to the last.
You can see the growth as
Oh,
far
I
as a
can, as a
filmmaker. Yeah. Oh
filmmaker,
yeah.
and the way he evolved the story in a very subtle way. Uh, the ending of Night of the Living Dead is probably one of the best endings ever in any film. And the last scene in Survival is pretty good too. So yeah, those are the two, the bookends.
The bookends are the ones that stick out for you. That's great. No, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So you and I've had just some discussions about George once again, and I remember you telling me that it was important, like I'd mentioned earlier, to George, that people they put the work in. They do the work. They show up every day,
Yeah.
and they do their work, and like good things will happen.
Yeah.
So you're surrounded by this awesome team at the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
of which I'm very grateful to have like some minor part in, which thank you very much for letting me come down and work with you and
Oh my
be
God,
a part of it.
I feel the same. Absolutely.
Can you tell us about the team, a little bit about the team and what they bring to the organization and what stands out every day to you as these people bring their passion for George?
Yeah, their passion is really they're interested in this community, in this horror world. They saw his films, and and they see other films in the horror world and they like it, they love it,
Yeah.
and they want to help spread the word. And each and every one of them brings a skill that we need. So so not only are they bringing their passion, but they're also bringing their skill sets.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they, some people are great at writings, and people are good at editing, and some people are good at managing, and some people are good with the social media, which of course I'm, like backward. I don't tweet or I don't do anything. so I, these skill sets come in handy. But it's not just the skills, it's what they want to, they want to help build something. And that's really the fun part, is that we're together and we're building an organization, and it's fun, and
It really is.
it's never boring. That's for sure.
So,
It's never boring.
quick piece of advice, maybe having been married to a filmmaker and seeing how they process and work. Do you have any quick advice, maybe to some young filmmakers who may not know where to maybe even begin with the process at all?
I would just say, write your story. Write the story. Make sure that the story is interesting, and then try to imagine how you would visualize it, how you would make it so that other people could enjoy your story through the lens. And I think that's really the most important part, is uh, being able to, um, and also, so I'm looking at it from George's actual point of view, because
Hmm.
he was the writer, but then he was also the director, and then he was
Right.
also the editor, and he
Right.
also used
You
to
have to
write.
take those hats off and put the other
Yes,
ones on, and
exactly.
it's
And
yeah.
now, and also now, the hats are worn by different people.
Hmm.
So if you have a knack for editing, so then you just say, hey, I want to, hang out with an editor and look at him or her work on an
Yeah.
Avid. And so to expose yourself to the skill that you want to learn. And so if it's writing, then go to writing workshops. If it's lighting, or whatever it is that you feel that you could contribute to a film, or making of a film, or putting a story together and making a film, then you need to hang out with people who do that, and then
Yeah.
learn, and
Yeah.
then be ready to do it.
Nurturing your own skill, it's the passion that
Exactly.
you have to tell the story, and you want to make sure that your skill is you're giving everything that you can and learning as much as possible,
Yeah,
for
so
that.
George's first job was, he would bicycle film to the news lab, because news was shot on film.
Right. Yeah.
And then so
They'd
he
have
would,
to get it back to
yeah,
the
so get it
station. Yeah.
back to the
Yeah.
newsroom, and then somebody would edit it, the film, so they could show it on CBS. And George, that's where he started to learn how to edit, was because
Was
he
watching them
was
work.
watching
That's
them
great. Yeah.
cut and do it and that. And
Yeah.
then he'd say, oh my God, I can do that. And then he'd shoot something, and then he'd edit it, and he'd say,
Yeah.
oh my, I just edited
I see what
this
I did
little
here.
piece of
Yeah.
film. And then it grew and evolved. And
Well, I mean, there's always that difference between maybe, reading a book about something and actually going out and doing the practical application of what you're
yeah,
reading about. And it's a
yeah,
whole different thing. You can learn how to make a movie in your head, but you don't really know how to make a movie until you actually are out there on the set and you're physically making the
yeah,
movie. It's a
yeah,
whole different thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think so that if George Romero was in the business, like as a young person today,
Hmm.
I think he would be an editor. I think that's what he would
I can
do.
see that. Yeah.
And and then learn, and then he would say, oh, I like to write. And then because I think the writing skills came later.
Yeah.
Even though he wrote almost everything he shot, his writing got better and better. It was a skill that he had to really learn.
Really develop for himself,
Yeah,
find his own voice in a sense. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but editing though is a skill set
Most
that you
definitely.
could physically do, and he learned it. And I think that's what he would probably do today
That's
if
really
he was
awesome.
a young guy.
Well, hey, I want to say thank you for sitting
Oh,
down
well,
with me
thank
today
you.
and just being able to talk a little bit, and thank you for being a part of the film festival.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen, Suzanne Romero. So thank you, Suze, for being here. Appreciate it.
and enjoy those movies.
All right.
Good night.